Here's the 2 most effective rotator cuff exercises you should do. This video explains the benefits, optimal technique, and how to progress. Get ready for bulletproof shoulders, stronger overhead pressing, and pain-free training. How do you guys like to train your rotator cuff? Barbell, band, or dumbbells? Let me know. We're going to start with the dumbbell external rotation. This is a very popular exercise, and for good reason. Let's discuss why. All right guys, part of being human is it's normal to have side-to-side differences. We've got a dominant arm and a non-dominant arm. The good news about our dumbbell external rotation, unilateral training. We can focus on one arm at a time and reduce the strength deficit that exists between sides. With regard to the intensity when we're using a dumbbell, it's the most challenging at the outer to mid-range of motion. As we externally rotate more towards a vertical alignment, the intensity drops off, and we've got a movement for that a bit later on. With regard to the scapular position, just avoid extremes. I don't want you elevating up like this, and you don't need to fully depress down to this extent. Somewhere in the middle is going to be best for most people. Basically, you need to choose a level of elevation or depression that allows you to feel the rotator cuff, those external rotators on the back of the shoulder working. Play around and choose what suits you best. Let's talk about range of motion. This depends on your level of shoulder mobility. You want to go down as far as you can while keeping your scap retracted. As I'm going down, you can see that that's probably the limit for me. If I start to go forward, I'm getting a deeper range of motion, but it's coming at the expense of me dumping my shoulder forward. So this really depends on your level of mobility. You just want to get that big stretch in the posterior cuff, and then when you get that with your scapula being set, you want to externally rotate so that the wrist joint is above your elbow, and then you're just repeating that for reps while maintaining that scapular control and feeling the posterior cuff sensation. Let's talk about your overall body posture. You can see that I'm posted up on my hand. I've got a proud chest and my torso is facing forwards. This allows me to really get a nice contraction in that posterior rotator cuff. A big mistake that people make is they start to hunch like this. You're just going to get a terrible functional activation sensation through the rotator cuff. Stay proud, stay forward, and you're set up for success. A really important part of your setup is placing the elbow onto the VMO. This way you can push against your quad muscle, and it gives you a really nice resistance when you're doing your external rotations. If you've got it on top of the knee, you're very likely to start losing position. You start losing that scapular retraction. You stop feeling it in your rotator cuff, not good. Put it on the VMO and you're set up to win. What I find fascinating about rotator cuff training is how your setup determines the difficulty. If we're in a position like this, you can see I'm quite horizontally adducted. My rotator cuff is quite mechanically strong in this position. The same weight, if I abduct my shoulder, becomes increasingly challenging. So keep that in mind as a form of progression. You can increase your weight over time, but you can also change the amount of abduction to challenge that rotator cuff. Arguably the most important part of rotator cuff training is tempo, the speed in which you do every rep. We've got small muscle groups in our external rotators. We really need to make sure that they're actually working on the way down and the way up. I like to use around a 2 to 3 second eccentric and similar time on the way up as you come to the top, just to fully feel those muscle groups working. Let's move on to the 90-90 band external rotation. I love this one because it makes up for the deficits in our dumbbell training. Let's talk about it. The unique benefit of this setup is how the resistance acts on our rotator cuff. With the bands, we have the luxury of being challenged in the horizontal plane of motion. This is perfect for overloading that mid to end range of motion. This is great because that's when our rotator cuff is actually the weakest. Another advantage of this exercise is it better replicates the real world challenges that we face. What I mean by this is our elbows are unsupported. This involves the whole shoulder complex into our rotator cuff training. This better replicates what we have to go through with our overhead pressing exercises, how that rotator cuff has to stabilize amidst movement. Great for dynamic demands. Here's your technique checklist for the band external rotation. You want to anchor the band with enough height to clear your head. You want to drop down onto your knees because this way we can fix our lumbopelvic region so that we're locked in and working our external rotators. Arms at 90-90 position, and you want a hand width which allows you to get that orientation. From here, you want to externally rotate so that the fist is above the elbow every single rep. The most important part about your technique is pausing at end range. We want to do that because that inner range contraction is the most difficult point and where you've got the most to gain. I recommend a 1 to 3 second contraction every rep and controlling the negative. So it should look like this. You go here, you get a powerful external rotation contraction, you pause, you light up that posterior cuff, you control it down, and you come back again. You really have to own that end range of motion because that's where the magic happens. Simplicity of progression is what makes this so effective. Over time, gradually increase the band thickness as you get stronger and just keep staying challenged in the prescribed rep range and one that allows you to feel your rotator cuff working. Let's discuss rotator cuff training in your routine. I'm going to summarize why, when, and how. Firstly, our overhead pressing exercises require posterior cuff strength. The reason for this is when we're going overhead, we want our elbows to be tracking in that scapular plane. If we have weakness in our rotator cuff, the elbows are going to start flaring and we're going to be less likely to use our prime mover muscles in our shoulder, chest, and our triceps to their maximum potential. You should be training your rotator cuff because your body is very intelligent. What I mean by this is if your nervous system determines that there is a limitation in your body, such as your rotator cuff, it will reduce your output and it will reduce your strength. The perfect example of this is the foundation of a house. If you have a foundation built on mud and twigs, or if you have a rotator cuff that is weak and doesn't create stability for your shoulder, then your house, aka your big boys, your prime mover muscles in your upper body, won't be able to display their maximum strength. That's the value of rotator cuff training and why you should take it seriously as part of your training practice. If you're doing a lot of stretching overhead and you're getting quite loose in your shoulder joint, stabilization with rotator cuff exercises is going to help you bulletproof your shoulders to be stable, strong overhead in that new range of motion. When doing external rotations as part of your warm-up, do them short of fatigue with the goal of getting blood flow to your rotator cuff, and this is best done before any overhead pressing. In regard to strength training for the rotator cuff, it's simple. Use a progressive overload mindset with a frequency of 2 to 3 times per week. 2 to 3 sets of 8 reps is the sweet spot for intensity, volume, and just a sustainable progression model. Cheers for watching, legends. Check out fitness FAQs everywhere online to learn everything you need about calisthenics. See you next time.